Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Super Lady Hero Hour here on Fanversation. I am Yael Tygiel. I'm joined as always by Kay-B. Hello, Kay-B.
Hello. I'm excited to dive into the most talked about film, I feel like, in a
Yes,
long time.
absolutely. This is our special discussion about Zack Snyder's Justice League, which premiered on HBO Max over the weekend. Um, let's start with overall thoughts. Overall, did you like it? Did you not like it? How do you feel?
Overall, I am kind of indifferent. I will say that for me in the Justice League Josh Whedon version, um, like the Lex Luthor story wasn't that compelling. So it is interesting to see it be essentially completely written out in this one. And I was fine with that because I was like, this isn't like the best use of Lex, in my personal opinion, in that particular film. But this one was just so long that I think for me, it was really hard to like maintain my focus. And I do think that like it would have been better suited as a 4-part series versus maybe even just a 3-part series, actually, now that I think about it. Because like 1 and 2 are only an hour, technically. That's the first hour. So I mean, they could have been combined into like the first part and then we moved forward. But yeah, I just kind of feel like, man, they were so long, it was hard for me to really kind of want to keep going because there are a lot, like there's a lot of great action scenes, which I love. I do appreciate that like each character has their own agency and storyline, particularly with the Flash and Cyborg. I think Cyborg's story is the most compelling in this version. And it's really great to see because at the time, I don't think it had been announced that The Flash was going to have a solo film. Cyborg, of course, still does not have a solo film. So I think we were really building up to the fact that, like, listen, we've had a ton of Batman solo films. We've had Superman solo films, Wonder Woman, Aquaman. Like, we know where that's going, but let's give these other 2 members of the Justice League their due. And so, yeah, I'm like, oh, I appreciate that. But I still don't think it needed to be 4 hours. Like, I don't think I'll ever feel that way, in my personal opinion. But how did you feel overall?
I think you make a lot of really fantastic points. So here's how I feel about Zack Snyder films. He makes beautiful cinema,
They're so
visually stunning, aesthetically pleasing. It is just like nutrients to your eyes. That is what it is. It is what you want to look at. And this was very much a beautiful 4-hour masterpiece of beauty. It was nice to look at. I enjoyed that. Were I in charge, there's so much that could have been trimmed out. It almost felt like he felt obligated to just put in any scene that he thought of, whether it contradicted the story or not, and then go, we'll call that a dream. We'll call that a premonition, because he needed to throw things in because people wanted to see his vision. So they saw all of it. And he was like, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to have to go through this again. I'm going to throw all of it in there. That's what it felt like watching it. I think that there was a good story in there. I would have enjoyed that made into a 2-hour max movie. I didn't need everything else. And it was hard to enjoy what the main story was because there was so much other stuff that made me roll my eyes and go, why am I still watching? Like, why is this movie not over?
Mm-hmm.
So that was frustrating. But I think there was a movie in there that I would like. And I almost want to take it and like trim it down myself, do a yell cut, and be like, this, here you go, here's a 2-hour movie. And it would have been fantastic.
He said, I think.
If I had all the time, I would 100% do it. Daryl is in our chat. Thanks for being here. And he says, very artistic cinema. Absolutely. That is what he does. That is where he excels. I mean, I always say Sucker Punch is my example of that, is that it's a bad movie. It's beautiful. It's stunning. It is absolutely stunning. Yes, the Tygiel tightening. Start that hashtag. Release the Tygiel tightening.
I just feel like the only thing is, I agree with the sentiment that Zack Snyder makes really gorgeous films. I think the cinematography is always well done. The one thing that will forever bother me about this film is I hate how he does the Flash. I hate it. Like the slow every single time. Like, I'm like, doing that once is fine so that you get the idea of how, you know, Barry Allen's powers work. But like literally every time the Flash moved, we had to do it in slow-mo. And I was like, no, like, I do not need this. And like, maybe it's because I'm not even sure if the TV show, I think they may have done slow-mo like once, maybe twice. But I was just like, Zach, we get it. Like, he's fast. I don't need to see the slow version. I mean, I think the first time, and then of course, the next time we should have seen it was the fight on the newly born, like reborn Superman, because that made sense, because there's always historically kind of been this battle between the two of them about who's the fastest. And so, I mean, he essentially knows nothing about Superman at that point. Like, they don't have a relationship. So he's thinking, oh, I'm faster than him. And as soon as he sees him, he's like, how is this dude like doing 50 things? He was like, wait a minute. Okay, I probably met my match, which is like an interesting scene. I just think that those are the only two times. Like, I don't need it. I don't need the slow-mo any other time.
I totally get what you're saying. I personally, the eyes one of Superman is like my favorite one.
Yeah.
And so I'm so glad that that's there, because it is, you're 100% right. It is the, like, he doesn't know that he's also super fast. So I love that. But I agree with you, because what we don't get is the speed. We get it from his perspective, which is, you know, the show does it and gives us both ways, which is really nice. So I agree. I think what's also interesting is the humor that was left in. The like 3 jokes that got to stay are interesting. So again, this is how I feel. I feel like there originally were 0 jokes, and Zack Snyder was like, okay, I like this joke and I like that joke from the Whedon version. It was like, those 2 may stay.
And
that's how I think
got to go.
That's how I think that happened.
Yeah, for the most part, though, you know, I purposefully actually didn't rewatch rather the Joss Whedon version in an attempt to kind of watch this with fresh eyes.
Sure.
But there isn't, I mean, the removal of Lex Luthor, I think, is and that particular storyline, I think, is the largest like difference between the 2 films, because the Steppenwolf content is very similar and it is like almost exactly the same, but not quite. And of course, Zach added in like a lot more frills, a lot more action, a lot more like high stakes in that regard. But I think storyline, like content wise, that is the biggest thing. Then of course, adding in that small portion for the Flash, because really the Flash's storyline is actually the same too, apart from adding Iris back in and adding him at the dog shop. So their like meet cute is different, but then Cyborg has like the most dramatic changes in the film. And so for me, you know, Ray Fisher is talented as Cyborg in general. And I do feel really bad about everything that's going on, because he has been blacklisted and blackballed for being honest about his experience on set with Joss Whedon. And, you know, it's so interesting because he's so grateful to Zack Snyder, because, you know, it's true. Like when these actors signed on for Justice League, they signed on for Zack's vision. They didn't sign on for Joss's vision. And of course, like the unimaginable happened, and so things changed, like that makes sense. But Ray is such a class act, and I really like wish that we had a standalone kind of Cyborg film, or we're able to see him in the Flash film, which we know he was recently cut from. And so I'm just like, because he is a really compelling cyborg, and that was like the most interesting part of the changes for me. And to Daryl's point, I did actually like seeing Martian Manhunter, still wildly underutilized though, because we didn't have enough time. And me personally, like, I would love to see more of Slade Wilson. And we didn't get that either, but we only got that small scene with like Lex and Slade, which, to be honest, we didn't need in this film because we had no Lex.
Yeah.
So it was like,
yeah,
I love Slade, but
I want to talk about all those points you made. So I agree. The cyborg story was great, was fascinating, there was like an arc, like there was a whole, yes, 100%, I could take that movie out and that's a whole movie that I would watch. Like that story was fantastic. The thing about Martian Manhunter is at the end where he shows up, I loved that. When he shows up as Martha early on, I was like, what? Why?
Right.
Also later when Lois goes to Martha, I expected her to say something
about their last meeting.
Yeah.
Yes. Like the normal thing would have been like, girl, last time we spoke. I mean, it would have been some correlation, but yet it wasn't.
So then I don't know why it happened. But I will say the other big difference that I think worked very well is we got context for Steppenwolf's motivation. Like we understood that he is working for someone else. So he's the big bad, but he's like the
little bad.
Yeah. So after the big battle, which ends up with our actual big bad being like, whatever, we're invading. And then the movie ended. Like, I thought, okay, we're moving into hour 4. Like, let's do this now. You've set up this big invasion. Where is that going? When do we see that? Is that the next movie? Is that in a Batman movie? Also, this entire premonition with Joker, I know people are very excited about this. I didn't need any of it.
Because I didn't think that it was a premonition. I mean, quite frankly, I just thought it was a dream where they were chatting, where essentially the multiverse was mentioned, like in a very simplistic way. And, the idea of jumping from a timeline to timeline existed. And in this particular timeline, Superman is no longer part of the Justice League. It feels like Aquaman is dead. I mean, because where Mira came, which also I have a gripe because why did Mira have a British accent like randomly in that dream in the beginning? And then I was like, what's happening here? That's odd.
Yeah.
And then who else was missing? Well, Wonder Woman wasn't there. And so I was just kind of like, okay. And we saw that Slade was working with Batman.
Right. So let's talk about Slade because he pops in for that.
And on the boat. That's it. It's so weird.
But if I remember correctly, the boat part in the previous movie was the button. It was the post-credit scene.
Yes.
So we moved it into the storyline and then he doesn't come back.
But we didn't though, because it was literally the end of everything before it meant nothing, I guess, in this instance. It was like, okay. And then you don't know in this premonition, which here's the thing, Batman, why are you having a dream about Slade Wilson? But we haven't seen the two of you interact at all. Mm-hmm. So for us as viewers, it's like, do you even know him yet? Like, you know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. I'm calling it a premonition because at some point they called it they called something else that Batman did a premonition.
Batman in the film, when they're engaging with Steppenwolf, said, I just had a premonition and the Flash told me that Lois Lane was key.
Right. Right. Okay, Daryl in the chat says people who've watched the DCAU or read the comics, this is how it works. Darkseid sends his agents to Earth to look for anti-life. Personally, anti-life should just be called death, but whatever. He only comes himself when it's found. I see. But in this movie that I just watched,
right, like taking it outside the context of the comics, because I think that like this version does a lot. You know what I mean? Like, I think it pulls from a lot of different sources, including, Zack's mind, and I think, melds it together. So here, just in the context of this, it's one thing if it's a premonition, cool, but I don't think that was explicitly clear, in my personal opinion.
Sure.
It just felt like a dream, like, which we know it's a dream only because he wakes up. Right. So that's what is clear.
But also, like, as a viewer of this movie, and essentially this movie alone, what is how I ended this movie. Yeah, Daryl said there's a premonition of Diana's death, so I guess that's why she isn't there. Okay.
And then, I mean, yeah, we just have to assume that Aquaman's dead based on Mira's conversation. And then, the Flash is older because he looks older and has like facial hair.
Genuinely, I had no idea who it was. I thought it was someone else.
And even because his suit is more advanced, but also looks like it's from the past simultaneously. Yeah. And then Cyborg is doing his thing. So again, like, I am totally fine with, like, actually the last few minutes of the film, I wish were actually a part of the film, if that makes sense. Like, I think it would have been compelling to have Superman leave Justice League for whatever reason. And I mean, it felt like Joker was alluding to the fact that Batman let Lois die, like something along those lines. So it's just, and that's, why I guess Superman is no longer a part of the team. I guess I don't know. I probably would have cut down the Steppenwolf stuff and created like a new, because I guess in my mind, I'm looking at this film as how it was intended to be, which was like a stepping stone for other films. And if that were the case, I felt like the ending should have reflected that, but it didn't. But maybe that's because this is just Zack Snyder's, Justice League, and maybe it just kind of sits where it is, and how it is. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Yep, I watched it.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it from a cinematography perspective, for sure. I always actually enjoy. So something I enjoy is I really like Henry Cavill as Superman. Like, I know that's not a popular opinion for lots of people, but I genuinely enjoy him as Superman. And I actually really enjoy his chemistry with Amy Adams too, as Lois Lane. So I will always appreciate that. Again, I'm saying my praises to Ray Fisher. I just wish we would get more of him. Gal as Wonder Woman, I think she does great too. And then of course, like Jason Momoa is, the most attractive Aquaman and clearly made for it. So like, here we are.
Question, sorry, real quick about Aquaman. Just real quick, and I open it up to the audience. He takes off his shirt, but not jeans or boots. He swims in jeans and boots.
It's funny how he gets in the ocean with those jeans on. Like, literally will just walk right in there.
Jeans and boots?
Well, the first scene actually did take off his shoes, but he still had on those jeans. And I remember thinking like, oh, okay.
I'm not saying he has to be nude. He could be wearing like leggings. I just think
trunks, like something.
Just denim. If you've ever swum in denim, like,
it's heavy.
Thinking?
Yeah, it's weighing you down, literally.
Sorry, go on.
But so I'll always enjoy those pieces. But I will say that like, it's an ambitious film in the sense of trying to bring everything together in this way, and even Aquaman's storyline is muddled. In it, you're kind of like, who are these people and why do we care? Which is interesting because, again, the standalone Aquaman film doesn't come out until after. So we don't know these people and it's not inherently clear who they are. I mean, like, I have, of course, seen Aquaman now, but like watching that when this film was supposed to come out, like, I wouldn't have. So it's like, oh, okay. And you could say the same about Diana, because at the time Wonder Woman was not out either. So like her Amazonian storyline.
No, the first one had come out
when Justice League came out.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the first one had come out when Justice League. It came out between Batman v Superman and Justice League.
Did it?
Yeah, because there was a lot of discussion about the Amazons and how in her movie they wore like warrior stuff, and in this movie they wore like crop tops. So that's the only reason I remember that it came out in between the movies.
Well, let me tell you how I clearly don't remember that.
That's okay.
But here we are.
Your point still stands. I think that
I still think it still was like it just was muddled. Like I don't know any other way to put it. So
I think
okay, so they came out the same year.
Yeah.
Which is wild to me that they came out the same year.
I think this was an opportunity to course correct continuity errors. Like they literally could have fixed the huge continuity of like Aquaman's story, which doesn't, what happens in this story and what happens in a standalone are completely different. So like
even Mira's hair color is wildly different though, like wildly.
The situation that like she was raised by his mother and he was dropped off at his father's doorstep. Like we could have corrected this. We had an opportunity and chose not to, which I think is a shame.
Yeah. Again, I think that Zack's films are always ambitious. So like truly. And I felt that way about Watchmen. Like I feel that way about pretty much all of Zack's film. I think they're wildly ambitious.
Well, beautiful to look at.
Yes. But that doesn't mean that I hate them, because again, like I enjoyed Watchmen. I still think it's wildly ambitious, but I actually really enjoyed Watchmen. You know, the very first Superman, Man of Steel, I adore. I don't care that people don't like it. I love it. And I'm a huge Kevin Costner fan. And so I'm like, oh, well, guys, I enjoyed this. But yeah, there's so many holes that are still left, I guess. Like I still have the same questions almost as I did when I left the other version 4 years ago or 3.5 years ago, whatever our timeline is at this point. Like I still don't have the same amount of clarity. But you know what? Going into it, I wasn't expecting that. I think that I came into this with a very clean slate and a clean mind, in the sense that whatever was going to be, it was going to be. And this is what it was. Like it doesn't necessarily tie into anything. You know, something that I'm hoping for more of going forward. And they've talked about this from a DC Comics, you know, kind of Warner Brothers standpoint, is they are trying to build continuity in the DCEU. And they are. And I am hoping that the continuity that they build in the future can tie back to some of these things. I don't think anything will tie back to Zack Snyder's Justice League, if I'm being honest. Like, I don't think so. Like, I just don't think that's the direction they'll go in. But I am hoping that like the new standalone Flash film will tie into, you know, something. And well, I guess I just told on myself, and that's a lie, because we know that Iris West is going to be in this one. So the Flash will likely tie into the Zack Snyder version, you know, which is fine. But that's what I just need a little bit more continuity. And quite frankly, y'all, I need them to pick better villains. Like, that's really where my heart and opinions lie. Like, the DC films, for me, I end up liking them because of like the camaraderie, the acting performances, the things, but it's really never the villains. Like, I'm never like, dang, this villain was like the best villain ever. I'm still confused about who the real villain was in Wonder Woman 1984. Humanity. Like, I mean, again, I'm like, the villains for me, it's where it's almost always falls short. So
what kind of villain do you want? Who do you want to see?
I just want a villain that is better fleshed out. So I think doing the Slade Wilson storyline proper and justice, like Slade is actually a compelling villain, like in my personal opinion, but it takes just it takes so much to really get there. And I'm hoping they utilize Joe again, because I would really like to see his version of Slade Wilson. Like, Slade is a very compelling villain, mostly because he kind of toys the line on, like, half the time you're like, but I kind of agree with what he did. So I'm not really sure, you know, like, you're like, he is the villain, but like, I kind of agree with his mindset. And he's like one of those villains where you're like, he's not wrong though, but he is wrong. You know, so it's like the combination of both. I don't necessarily need like a super powered villain. I'm okay if we just have like a regular villain who's an assassin. Like, I'm okay with that as long as like the storyline is written well and it's compelling. So Ares is the villain in the first Wonder Woman. That was a choice because I'm like, oh,
But then it turned out that she's fighting humanity.
Yeah, I think literally all of her villains just go back to it being like humanity, because even Cheetah in 1984 really is like.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that it might benefit the DCU to start having more human villains with like human villainy. So like, yeah, they could be, you know, an assassin, they could be the mastermind, they could be whatever, because they're fighting powered people, so they've got to have a unique way to do it. I don't personally need aliens, especially because like we already have aliens.
Right.
So we don't need other aliens. You know what I mean? Like,
but apparently we do. Like, apparently in the DCEU we do. We need more aliens, or we need gods of war, or we need, you know, like, apparently, whereas like maybe that's why people keep reusing Joker. There are other villains other than Joker. But I mean, because he's just like, he's regular. I mean, like, that sounds terrible, but he doesn't have powers, but he is a sociopath. Like, and so, you know, like, for the most part, it's a compelling story. So I just think that, like, yes, to your point, and my point, and probably everyone's, if we just have like a more humanistic villain. So that's why I'm curious to see what they're going to do with the Flash, because I have a feeling they're going to go speedster. So,
or Time is the villain. Speaking of the Flash, I will say, and speaking of the Flash and Time, I will say, in this, the moment where Barry like rewinds time for a minute,
yes,
or for 30 seconds, however much time he rewinds.
It was probably 3 years, to be honest. I mean, like, we don't.
Yeah, I genuinely, it was done beautifully. I don't think I would have understood that is what he did had I not been a viewer of the show.
Oh, so you're saying, like, if you had never seen an episode of The Flash, I mean, if you had never seen an episode of The Flash before, you would not have known what was happening in this particular scene in this movie.
Yeah, at the end when like they fail and he rewinds
because they definitely failed.
Mm-hmm. The way that it's done is beautiful, but I think it would have taken me longer to understand it had I not seen the show, because one of the things that I think this movie, specifically this version of this movie, did was it expected you to know a lot. It expected you to come in having seen the previous movies, knowing these characters. So that didn't, like, as somebody who is a casual viewer of the DC films, I did not see Batman v Superman.
Please don't ever.
So
I need that with all the love in my heart too, because again, y'all know I love Henry Cavill, but please.
I know that made it more difficult for me, at least in the first two parts, to understand where we were, what was happening. I remember seeing this movie in theaters, the original, and going, wait, Superman's dead? Because I didn't know that. So like, it definitely, this movie expects you to have seen all of the other things. And I think, to Daryl's point earlier, that we would know some of these things, or this is how it goes in the DCAU or the comics. And I only understood that he reversed time because I watched the show The Flash. And I think that it's a lot to expect your people to have seen everything. That said, I am someone on the Marvel side who has seen everything and went into Endgame going, you can't watch this movie without having seen everything. So,
well, I will say though,
yeah,
you're not wrong that the expectations are high, but here's the problem with that. You haven't introduced a Flash before.
mm-hmm.
So like the problem with that is that's okay. Like that expectation is okay for Batman because we've seen Batman in several films before. That expectation's okay with Superman. I'll give you a little bit of Wonder Woman since it came out a few months before, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
But with the Flash, because this is literally the first time you're seeing the Flash in the DCEU, you can't take those liberties realistically, because then people are like, what just happened with this character? So it's kind of like, oh
yeah. And he kept saying, specifically the Flash said, like, I try to avoid running that fast because I don't know what's going to happen. I'm afraid to run that fast. So like he himself didn't know if he could rewind time.
Right. And that's the thing. So, and with Aquaman, you can't take those liberties either, or Cyborg. Like with those three characters, because we're treating them as like, this is their formal introduction, mm-hmm. which that was what I was saying earlier. Like the Aquaman characters, they just kind of like tossed you in. Like, who are these people? Truly, who are they?
Same with Aquaman himself, right? We have Bruce saying, I'm looking for this guy. I hear he talks to fish.
Could have been anyone.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you. That said, the Ray Fisher story, for Cyborg, we got that story. This is the movie finally where we understood who he is and what the story is, and I like this arc with his father. It's interesting.
I love it.
But do we not all agree? I know someone in our chat does, that the best story of Cyborg so far is Doom Patrol.
Yeah, so like Doom Patrol, and I've said this before, like on our show when we're watching Doom Patrol, man, Doom Patrol knows what to do with Cyborg, and so does Zack Snyder. I'm not discrediting that either, because I do think Zack did a great job in the amount of time to give Cyborg a compelling feature film story. But Doom Patrol, there's just so many layers that like Doom Patrol gets right, and Doom Patrol is wonky in the sense that you can't actually expect every character to get a fully fleshed out. Like because it's so crazy, I stopped having expectations like in the beginning in terms of like every character getting like a full robust story, and yet they still do it. So it's like, I stopped having those expectations. I was like, I really don't know where this is going. But ultimately, like when I look back on season 1 of Doom Patrol, every single character ended up, I know their backstories. I know their lives. I know why they're here. I know the struggles they are continuing to have. And Cyborg is no different. And I think that they do a really good job. And, if I'm being completely fair and transparent, DC is fantastic when it comes to TV. They know how to make compelling TV stories. They struggle a bit with features. And, Shazam's a great feature. Aquaman, I think, was really good. The first Wonder Woman is, really, I think like they're trying and they're getting there. And I think on the converse side, Marvel's really good at film, and they're now trying their hand at TV. And I'm not going to say it's bad, because I don't think WandaVision was bad. But I still think they have the upper hand when it comes to features, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, I think one of the things that DC does best with TV is continuity, and they seem to not do it at all with their movies. Whereas Marvel, on the other side, their movies are pretty good on continuity. There are still some giant plot holes, but it's fine. All right. Any final thoughts before we rate this film?
No, we can rate it. Let's do it. How do you feel?
So for everyone who is new to our show, here on Super Lady Hero Hour, we rate things on a scale of poop to kittens.
With some things in between.
With something in between. This is tough.
It's hard because it's 4 hours. Honestly, if we could break up the parts, I could give you a better answer per part. Per part.
Okay, so I'm going to give it a couple ratings, and then we'll see where that averages out. Okay, so for visually, kittens, hands
Yeah.
down. It's a Zack Snyder film. It's beautiful. For length of time, poop. For inability to trim, poop. For keeping my attention, I'm going to say spoon because it's long, and so I couldn't stay into it, but there were parts that I was super into. If I, in my brain, whittle out all the stuff that I didn't need and just look at the story, the movie that the tightened, what is it? The Tygiel tightening, it's a kitten. Tygiel tightening is a kitten. So the version in my head, the stuff that I remember is a kitten. That's how I'm grading it because it was the only thing I could do. KB, what about you?
Okay, visuals, I'm giving like 6 kittens. Okay. I like visually, I'm never disappointed by a Zack Snyder film. Okay. Because yes. Length of time, of course, it's gonna be a hard no. For me. Just
it's a poop.
But my attention span also. What can I say? Compelling, the addition of the compelling storylines that we deserved, kitten. So I'm gonna say that. Yes, absolutely. I would even say I liked the performances. Like the performances, I would give it a kitten. But mostly it's the length of time. And then it's those like random things that happen, like truly random where I'm like, I don't know what this means. Those things I'm probably going to give a spoon because I don't know how they tie in. Now, also to be fair, now that I've watched it, because I have actually been, kind of off social media, I've muted everything on purpose.
Wow.
Only because I wanted to see Zack's interviews about it, but I didn't want to see it until I watched. So now that I know, I'm sure he's going to answer some questions that people have. So I would love to go back and watch those interviews. But for now, because I don't understand why he made some of these choices with the dream sequence, because I was like, well, we kind of underutilized the Joker here. Or why there's not enough Slade Wilson. I want to know those answers. So for that, they're giving it a spoon. But I still had a good time. Like, I think the action is why you watch a Zack Snyder film. That sounds terrible, but it's true because he's really good at these like big budget action scenes that are just wild and crazy. And you're like, what? And, the scene where Superman is newly risen is still one of my favorites of the film in general, because I just think, it's done really well. And Superman is like literally beating everyone to a pulp. And you're like, dang, relax. But like, he's out of his mind because also he just rose from the dead, with the help of some magic. And so, yeah, I'm like, okay. But why was Lex there? I mean, really, honestly, my real question is, did Lex drown in like the very first 3 minutes? Did you see that? It was just like Lex in a pool of brown water. And I was like, what's happening here?
Because it genuinely looked like terrible TikTok green screen.
I didn't know what was happening. And so I was like, is Lex drowning? Like, is Lex dying? Is Lex like, what's happening with Lex? Like, because there was no explanation, it was like opening scene, Lex poop. And maybe that was just to say Lex will not be in this film. I don't know. Because
Tari J. Miller in the chat says, I want him to answer for the 4x3. 100%. I'm giving you a poop on that behalf. On behalf of the 4x3. I will also say there were like 2 to 3 parts in the movie that actually looked like video game fighting.
What happened?
Am I frozen?
No, I mean like, which ones were
video? Oh, sorry. There's Diana and the bombing guys, like that whole fight sequence looked like a video game.
Got it.
And that to me, honestly, was poop. But otherwise, I think I'm gonna say overall kitten. I think overall kitten.
Overall, Aquaman. Also, I'll never get over how much I enjoy Aquaman flying with the Triton. Like, because it's so, also, these people fly with ease. Can we like just talk about that? How like literally everyone flies and it just happens. And then you're like, wait a minute, what? And I feel like the Flash, because he's the only one that's on the ground 24/7 plus Batman. But I mean, Batman doesn't have power. So I mean, out of the powered people, he's the only one that's on the ground 24/7. And I feel like he kind of looks at them like, dang, so y'all just gonna leave me? Like the way that they just, like the way Aquaman just takes the trident and flies midair and like
he needed to be carried. I'm like, Aquaman like drops, he glides, rather than like flies.
That's why I said with the trident, because he does soar with the trident. It's like the trident kind of leads him, and so he's flying midair with this trident and then killing the what are we calling them? Bees? I don't know what to. I don't.
Parademons. First of all, they were called parademons. Which
parademons. Thank you.
I'm going to say this. I only caught it in this version that they call them parademons.
Thank you.
In the Joss version, I don't believe I ever heard the word parademons. It may have been said, but I didn't hear it. So I was like, the bugs. They're bugs. I don't know why but they're parademons. I will also answer your question earlier about the poop water. It was the Kryptonian birthing chamber from the Ultimate Cut. So,
thank you. You know who did not watch the Ultimate Cut?
Again, this movie expects you to have seen too much.
Yeah, I did not. Ooh, but thank you for that too. Aquaman has strong legs and jumps high, and then he just kind of floats with his trident, which I'm like, also, that's another thing though. They assume you know how he got this trident, which is the entire journey of the first Aquaman, and it's kind of like, no, we don't know how he got this trident, actually.
Yeah, also he doesn't.
Like he just has it, and it wasn't a struggle. And it was.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap up the show?
You know, I will probably watch it again for continuity, but I'm going to watch it like broken up in separate parts, because watching it at once I can't do. Like I learned that about myself. I can't. And maybe it has something to do with the fact that we watch so much content that like my mind cannot take a 4-hour block. But I might watch it separately for things that I might have missed. But overall, listen, Zach, shout out to you for even having the energy to tackle this. And all the reshoots and all of the extra cash and all of the vision, the CGI. Like, yeah, I probably would have said no. Now it's interesting because people are campaigning that we get the original 4-hour cut of Black Panther. I'm like, whoo, guys.
All right.
That's a lot. So, and I 100% adore that film. So, it's like, whoo, but I guess we're going to see. So any more thoughts from you on how you felt about the film?
No, but you're right. We do watch a lot of content, and we will be back at our regular time, which is Wednesdays, to talk about all of the content that is currently out there, all the superhero shows, including Batwoman. Black Lightning is on hiatus right now. The Flash, Superman and Lois, and potentially a little tease about a new show that's coming out.
I think we should tease it. Yeah, I think so. We won't drop any spoilers for that one show, but the rest of the shows will definitely have super spoilers. And don't forget Falcon and the Winter Soldier again.
Yeah, also that one.
About the premiere, because boy, oh boy, do we have thoughts about that premiere. And so that's coming your way. So Yael, where can everyone find you until Wednesday?
I'm everywhere at Yael Tygiel. That's YAELTYGIEL. If you like Law & Order SVU, I have a show about that. It is on this channel. It is called Law & Order S Review. It's also in podcast format, so check that out. I also do a queer show called Have You Tried Not Being a Podcast? Available over on that hashtag show. And I will be back on Wednesday on my Twitch stream. Fuck Genshin Impact. We are going back to playing Zelda on Super Nintendo. So check that out. Kay-B, where can everyone keep up with you?
Yael cracks me up with how these video games stress her. It's wild to me, and I laugh every time. Everyone can find me at the Lady Kay-B. That's TheLadyKayB. Honestly, just come back here on Wednesday for Super Lady Hero Hour. Stop Asian hate. Donate to AAPI organizations. That's all I got until Wednesday. So,
yeah, thanks everybody.